What's up, guys? So we are back with another breakdown video. We're going to be doing our song Bad. I'm still getting used to kind of doing these breakdowns. This is obviously like the second one. If you have any tips to improve, definitely let us know, and hopefully they'll get better as we go along. We're going to try to do this for most of our songs that we release. Also, if you're looking for any like one-on-one private lessons with us, we're going to try to start doing those. So just send us a message on Instagram. We also have, I believe, a Sound Better link in our bio on Instagram and maybe here on YouTube as well. So you can always hit us up there to do some lessons. But yeah, any questions you have about the project or any other production questions you have, just leave them in the comments. And we're going to start by playing the track. We're not going to play the whole track. We'll play a little bit of the track in case you haven't heard it before, and we'll go from there. Let's go ahead and get started with the breakdown with the kick and bass. Usually I'll group them together, and I would say on all of our newer projects we've been grouping them together and pretty much just using like a fab filter to kind of clean things up at the end of the project. So this is kind of the settings that we have. These two aren't even on, but these two, I think it was just knocking a bit in this area, so we brought it down, and then kind of smoothing out the lower end here. As far as kick goes, I actually think started using more audio instead of MIDI for kick recently, but in this one we did use MIDI, and this is the kick sample we used. We did some EQing here, cutting out again that for some reason with our kicks, we've kind of been going back and forth on how much we want to process them. I mean, we noticed that a lot of people in other tutorials don't really process like their kicks like crazy like us. So I don't know, maybe we're doing something wrong, but it's just kind of what we have, noticed with our ears, and we kind of cut it out. So you can see back here, we kind of cut out more, but we'll go over that. So right here, this frequency and this around 700, and then also around like 110 to 120, 130-ish, we notice a lot of like knock or punch in these areas, and we kind of like to even those out a bit or level them out a bit, so we bring it down there pretty much on all of our kicks, I would say. We always cut out 30 hertz and below with a soft curve. We're not really hard cutting that. On low end, from what I've heard, you don't really want to hard cut the low end like with a times 4 or whatever. So we've been doing that. And then we got another fab filter here on 43 hertz. And that is just bringing that low end down. I think leaving some more room for the bass, or at least smoothing it out a bit. We usually keep our kicks in mono, so we had the mono utility here. And then we have a kick rack that I believe we made. We turned off these two, and then have some saturation, compression, and using K-clip here. K-clip's barely doing anything, but it is taking out some of that, some of that transient a bit. And then cutting out. See, this is what I'm talking about with our crazy EQs on our kicks. It's just kind of dialing it in for like the sound that we want, and making it sound the way that it should in our, opinion for the track that we're making. So we did do a lot of EQ work here, and we could play it with and without this here. Watch. Let's see what it's doing. So it kind of dumbs it down. You can hear that like clacky, clicky, thuddy sound. We like to kind of dumb it down a bit, where it's still punchy, but it doesn't have that like really harsh clacking that's gonna sound awful in car speakers. From what we've noticed, just car speakers kind of make that area of the kick more pronounced. So yeah, we've been cutting that out or EQing that to the best of our ability. This is just our filter for like the different sections like builds and fills, things like that. This is another EQ that we added. This is more to tame the low end a bit more, and then also up here in this area, but just to kind of leave room for synths, vocal, things like that. And then another EQ bringing down some more low. So we must have just, been, and this one's actually not doing anything. So, yeah, must have just thought it needed a little bit less low right here. So brought it down a bit more. As far as the bass goes on the group itself, we're just, making sure to roll off at 30. We tend to think that it feels a bit more clean that way, and less like grumbly. So that's what we've been doing there. And the sub, which can play it here. So I'll open the patch. Serum takes a while to open sometimes on my computer, but Serum 2 is actually a lot better than Serum 1 for loading, so glad that came out. Let's see once this loads. But we're automating the cutoff filter here, just with these little automations that we added. And this is the patch that we're using by Sound Factory. Yeah, so that's all there. And like I said, automating the cutoff filter. And then we get into processing. Just got some EQ here, cutting out most of the mids and highs. The low mids dipping around that same area. It's actually around 150, so it's a little bit higher, but evening out or taking out some frequencies that we didn't like, we can A/B with that. I don't know if it's gonna make a huge difference, but let's see here. So yeah, so there's some weight there. So we definitely wanted to remove that weight and not have that heaviness on the ears. And cutting out some more of the highs here, high mids there, and then taking out some low, and then around same area. So same thing, just shaping the sound basically, right? So I'll pop them up, but you can tell what they're doing. And why we do it why we have so many EQs and do it over and over. Just we set one, we think it sounds good, come back, maybe think, all right, needs a little bit more, and then just keep doing the same thing. So this is pretty much all the EQing that we have. Again, we go EQ crazy. This one's actually not doing anything, so that one can go. And then kickstart 2. So this is what we use for our sidechain most of the time. Set it to audio, and then sidechain it to the kick. And on this particular track, we had it at 100% and using this sub bass chain preset. We may have moved that and tweaked it a bit. But that's the preset we started with. And then we have this one in mono. Recently, we've been doing, I think, more bass mono. But because we have the top here, I think we just put this one in complete mono. And yeah, so we can move on to the top bass here. Just giving it a little bit of flavor, a little bit more transient to kind of cut through on smaller speakers, basically. Uh, the patch here, again from Sound Factory. I'll go through here. Just pause it if you want to take a look at it and use it at any point in your projects. But again, EQ work, bringing up some of that like mids area there, some highs with the high shelf, and then cutting out the low end at around 170-ish, I would say. Yeah. And then for whatever reason, this is just probably the EQ that I have, yeah, set at 115 on every track, every default track I open. I just have that set there. Pro Q3, again, cutting out the lows. And then also cutting out that same sort of area that we always find to have issues. And maybe that's just, us and a way that we think. Maybe it's not really ideal to be cutting it out there, but I think a lot of the low mids there build up, and it just sounds kind of harsh to us, at least on car speakers, and can kind of sound like flubbery sometimes, so, or like muddy. So we usually try to tame that as best we can in the tracks that kind of hit at that area. Utility, just bringing down the width a bit. We're not going mono on this one because it is the top bass, but I think it was a bit wide, so we brought it down a bit, and then just our side chain. And I think, set to audio 100%. I think we're using the same exact side chain as the sub because you kind of want them to be, moving together throughout the track. Not always, but I'd say for this one, definitely. Yeah, and that's pretty much our bass and kick. And those go into one group. Then we got drums. Drums, we cut out the low end on the group itself. Have a Sooth 2 on here. Barely doing anything, but it is doing something. And probably just taming some of the frequencies that are just harsh or sticking out. Just trying to smooth it out. And then we boosted it with the utility 2 dB, and probably was just leveling things a bit before sending it off to mastering. So, and then we have this reverb that we put on our drums. But let's take a look here. We'll play the drums by themselves. Nothing crazy, but yeah, so we have the drums, and then we have a drums group inside of the drums, and we did that. I don't actually know why exactly. I think this crash we wanted to leave outside of the group for sidechain purposes, but and there might be a better way to do that, but that's just what we do. So on this group, we have, again, cutting out the lows. We have a drum bus here, giving it a little bit more crunch and drive, and only on 14% though, but does bring them out a bit. And then we have a decapitator above that, and then we are cutting out the lows again because with the saturation, you're going to introduce some more frequencies that you want to cut out in that lower area, and then a little bit on the high end, kind of taming that. But I mean, that's at 18K. So then we have a channel strip. This is just doing our automation for like builds and stuff. With low pass filter, usually washout, but because we used Endless Smile, also same thing for the builds pretty much. And it's we use this pretty sparingly. You can really kind of mess up the mix if you use too much. We might be using it way too little. I don't know what normal people use it at, but that's what we like to use it at least on this project. It kind of depends. Some projects we're going up to like 40, 30, 40 anyway. So, and then kickstart on the drums, we usually go pretty light. You do want to have a bit of side chain on there. It's definitely to give it some groove as well as to get out of the way of the kick and stuff. But because it's mostly higher end instruments or sounds, you really don't need too much, and you don't want to mess up the groove with a lot of side chains. So keep it on audio. It's going to the kick, and then 30%, and we're just using this first preset because it's really short. All right, so let's get to the hat. So the hat here, again, using MIDI for the hat, and I like using MIDI for hats, so I probably won't change that anytime soon unless I see I need to, but just have this sample here put into Simpler, and bringing up some higher end here, and around 5.6 kilohertz, and cutting out the lows. Utility, this is just stock on my audio and MIDI tracks. I think they started doing that in Ableton 12 stock anyway, but maybe that's just carried over from 11 because I always put that on there. But anyway, Soothe, just on the harsh hi-hat preset. I'm not sure if I messed with the amount or the depth here, but just taming some of those harsh high frequencies. And then a vocoder. Vocoder I like to use on hats sometimes to kind of make them more like white noisy sounding. Not washed out, but like a shuffly sound, I would say, almost like a shakery sound instead of just harsh, clean sounding. I can show you what I mean with this one. Let's see if we can tell a difference here. So yeah, gives it a little bit of more of a shakery sound, and it's less harsh. I think it blends it into the track a bit more, sounds more natural. As far as MIDI, I guess I kept all these at the same velocity. I don't know if I usually change up the velocity, but you definitely can to give it a little bit more of a humanistic feel. And then I have these hats in this project. I fixed this before sending it off in the actual stems, but when we did send it off for mastering first time, we realized that this wasn't hitting and it sounded pretty odd, so we had to move that over, and we did fix it throughout the whole track and resend the stems over. But yeah, so this is hitting on every kick, and basically it's the same hat, a little bit. I think it's the same processing actually, but this sound a bit different. It might be the settings with the vocoder are a bit different, but it is. Oh, and it might be a different hat. Let me double check here. Open hat 10. No, same hat. So it does sound a bit different, but oh, that's probably the side chain. That's why it sounds a bit different. So yeah, side chain causes it to sound a bit different, but just hitting on every kick just gives it a little bit more, I would say, drive, and makes the song sound more alive in our opinion. So the clap, what do we got for the clap? Oh, also, as far as the hats go, we also have this sample that it's kind of a layer to the clap. It's cut out of this loop. The loop comes together with like 16th hats and stuff, but when we were sending it over to get mastered, we wanted to make sure that we had the all layers of the actual hat together. So we sent this one over with it, so we had to separate it, basically go in, cut out each one, and then reconsolidate the audio. But this one by itself, it looks like we're just cutting out the low end on this one, but you play it together with the hats here. Oops. All right, so yeah, that's just another layer getting added to the hats, and we have it here in all others. Probably won't keep it. That's kind of messy in my opinion, so probably won't. If we have to do that ever again, we're gonna just make a hats group here and then put them together. But let's go back to the clap now. clap. We have a cutting out the low end and then dipping a tiny bit here, only about 1.6 dB. And then we have this reverb on here, only at 23%. And that's on the group. Now this clap track here, channel here, is only for this fill, which sounds like this, and it goes under the snare. And this is pretty much just cutting out the low end using this sample here, which looks like I jacked from a side piece track, or yeah. Anyway, that's just in that fill there. And then the snare, so this is like the main snare, cutting out some lows again, and then a little bit of that low mid, and then making it a bit wider here, or a lot of bit wider, bringing it out to 66%. We try not to go too wide with things, but I don't know, it seems fine here to go a little bit wider. Normally we try to stay below 40%, but that's not like a hard rule. It just kind of depends, I would say. So this clap, or this snare here, sounds like this. And then this is another layer that we added, and this is also coming from that same, I believe it's coming from that same, let's see, yeah, the same sample. I just cut out the snare here, or clap here, so clap. Yeah, and those three layered together create the clap. Well, technically it's only two. Again, that top one is only for that fill. So, and then all other drums, I started to, so we cut out the low. This is pretty much on any group that we have, just to, other than obviously kick and bass or anything that needs low end, but you know, we pretty much cut it at around 100 to 115 hertz. And then on our all others, which is like shakers, you know, all the other stuff other than the main kick or hat and clap, we usually are adding a auto pan nowadays just to give it a bit more movement. Not a crazy amount, and the rate, I usually just keep it on 1 because it's pretty even. That's like what it defaults at anyway, but just to give it a bit more movement and make the drums feel a bit more alive. So that's what we've been doing there. And let's go down here. We already went over this. This is that hi-hat layer. Let's go to, so this top loop here, this is a different top loop. We cut it up into, I believe these are, yeah, these are part of the same loop. So this one here is, oh, and this might actually be another hat layer also, to be honest, which you don't need that many hat layers, but it just kind of happened. I think we were adding loops, and then we were like, well, it sounds cool with it. Without it, might not sound as good. So we just kind of left it. Also, I think these are, let's see. Yeah, it has that ending sound, so like the opening hat. So we wanted that in there. And then this top loop here is just sounds like a tambourine or something, and some perks, but just cutting out the low on there, not doing much. Also on this one, just cutting out the low, not doing much on that. This is just a random audio track that got left in there. We never deleted it. This is going to be kind of like offbeat hat, like double hat, you know, just giving it a little bit of swing. Sounds like this. Simple. Just got a different hat here and a simpler, and the high end is just being boosted a tiny bit here. So I think that was just to cut through the mix or whatever, but. And then we go to reverse crashes. We usually use reverse crashes during like in fills or transitions, like this is transitioning to the second part of the build. This is going from the break here to the build, things like that. And that is just simple reverse crash. Big Z has some really cool reverse crashing crashes that we like. Probably could have been brought down a bit in volume, but is what it is. Just cutting out the low end there. Crashes. So crashes, also a Big Z pack, and just cutting out the low on that. And then we have this West End delay that he uses on like crashes for like ambient delay type of things. So I think it sounds dope. Use it on the crashes. Since I've gotten it, I've used it every project on crashes. And then we're using a bit of kickstart. Not really to the kick or anything, but looks like just set at 1/4, 34%, nothing crazy. And then also a quick side chain, nothing, too deep there. But that's just, I like the bounce feel of it. And also to, let the kick shine through if it's at the beginning of the drop or something like that. But that one is just another audio track, I believe, that we didn't end up using, but they get, put in throughout the track sometimes. Happens. Shaker. This shaker, we created it with MIDI using a simpler and kind of had to shape it a bit as far as like what length we wanted and stuff. Let's go ahead and play it here for you. So just cutting out the, some of the mids, low mids and lows there. Utility that's just on my track, doing nothing. And then the kickstart to the kick and using this nice and tight preset, which is one of my favorites, and 53% only on that. Just kind of gives it a little bit of groove and also, keeps it out of the way of the kick and other things. So ride, I like to pan rides either far left or far right. Sometimes in some projects more than other projects, but this one we did far right, 20% or at 20. And just cutting out the lows and then some of the really high highs at above 18,000. This is, see what this is here. I think like a backwards clap or something, or backwards hat. So I think this was actually just made by mistake. I was chopping something up and then it made this like pattern and I thought it was cool. So then I ended up using it as like, and I love when that happens, like happy mistakes, you're just messing around or trying to do something else and then something sounds really sick. So you just add it. And that's what this is. Just cutting out the lows and kind of just gives it a bit more groove and shuffle feeling. This crash we added later on in the project, and I don't think we wanted sidechain on it, and maybe that's why we took it out of that the second drums group, but and it has the West End crash delay on there, cutting out the lows. Has a kickstart on there. I think it's actually just the same crash that we have above, but didn't want the side chain that was on the group, so we put it in our own. And then also a wider on there at 48%. And that's pretty much it for the drums. Let's go ahead and move on to effects. And so effects, we have, again, cutting out the lows, kickstart. For our effects, we're at 40% using the nice and tight preset, and then audio is going from the kick. And then we have an endless smile. This is probably just for builds. Yeah, so for the build, just see here. We have it turn off after the build, so we automate the on off and then also turn on before the build. And then we have the intensity at just 0.2%. And again, pretty low. We don't like to go crazy with it. Can get kind of wild if you go too much. These soothes we're not using. Utility, we bringing it up about 2 dB. That was just when leveling. We probably, I mean, we're pretty peaked out here at the 4.6, so we just slapped a utility on it, did it that way. Let's start here. We got wash here, I believe. No. This is a down sweep. Looks like a excellent down sweep. Let's see if we can open it up here. I mean, yeah, it's just a down sweep. This is the preset from Excellent Sounds. EQ, cutting out some highs and some lows. Don't want it too muddy, so we're dipping here around that 500 area. We used West End's, delay here again, and then cutting out the low end. And this is just settings that West End uses on like crashes from what we've seen in some of the projects, and we just copied it and took it from him pretty much. It's nothing crazy. It's just a delay with, certain settings. Ambient vocal. This is, let's see what this sounds like. Just to give it some ambient, and make it feel a little bit more alive. It gives it some rhythm. With the EQ, these type of sounds we usually EQ pretty crazy like this, like barely let any of it through. This isn't doing anything. We have another West End rack. I think it's his vocal rack that we slapped on here because it's technically a vocal, but micro shift, and then drum bus, giving it some, only 41%, but giving it some drive. Decapitator, I'll show you micro shift as well. And again, this is from West End. We didn't create this, but sounded good. We use it on a lot of things. So, and then this is West End's vocal processing that he uses, vocal rack. He has it available, especially if you join his Discord, Kick and Bass KMB. They have it available. So if you're wanting to get it, go ahead and get it from him. I don't want to be giving his stuff away, but EQ, low end, taking that out, boosting a little bit here, around 1.5, and then taking out 18 and above. Turned off the spectral resonator. That was part of the rack, I believe, but we also have auto pan going on this. Just kind of give it a bit more movement. Kickstart, we have it just in sync. It's 100% nice and tight. This one we wanted its own sidechain, apparently, or at least just to give it some bounce. So we use Soothe to kind of get like Track Spacer, where it'll sidechain certain sounds so that two other sounds so that they can kind of get out of the way of them when they're playing. So we're using Soothe and we're sidechaining it to a different vocal we have here. And it is, you just turn on the sidechain and then you choose whatever you're wanting to sidechain it to. And then we usually put it around 7, but that's really going to depend how much you want, how much you want to be cutting out. But pretty much anytime this back female vocal plays, it's going to be dipping those frequencies where the back female vocal is playing in this sound. If that makes sense. Hopefully I'm explaining that right. Again, I'm not a teacher, but I want to, get better at it. Auto filter, this is just for the builds, I assume. Or actually, it's just for this break here. And then a wider 65% for, ambient noises. We're going to go a bit wider with them usually. And then another auto filter here for this break, and then also this build. which I don't know why they're turning on there, and then it's only automating here in the drop for some reason, but is what it is. That might have been a mistake, and we'll go on to this other ambient vocal, which sounds like this. Which is at the second half of this drop, and then also we have this like only starting because we had this fill here, so or this like fake out drop type thing here, and then this starts a little bit later on. But yeah, just same type of thing, cutting frequencies that we don't think we needed, and also wanted to kind of put it more in the background. So usually with that, we're going to filter out most of the high end, and then pretty much all the low end and low mids. Soothe 2 on this, doing the same thing to that same back female, just cutting this out when that female vocal's there, because we want the back female vocal to be shining more. This is that back female vocal specifically. And we just wanted something to kind of give a bit more contrast to that vocal that we have, and give the track a bit more movement. I'm glad we added this because it actually does help pick up the energy a bit in the second half of the drop. And then even with this one, so we're cutting out a lot of the highs and lows, and again have that same vocal rack on here, and then just to kickstart 100% sync. So it's syncing to the track. It's not going to anything specific, and then it's a short one. So, and then wider, 33% on this one. And yeah, that's pretty much it for that one. We have this guitar pad. We had this, I like this little guitar preset that we found. Not sure where it was that we found it. It's already obviously flattened, but cutting out the highs and lows, and have a wider here, 70%. So you can hear it with without the EQ. It's like a electric guitar drone there, and then we just EQ'd it to make it sit below everything and not stand out like crazy. So making it more of like a pad. This snare is for the builds, and we have some low cut. So this is the FOMO channel strip, and this is just doing some low cut work here, and then washing out and OTT, and those are just automating up for the builds. The build snare. Let's hear what it sounds like. You can hear that there being washed out, and just builds the intensity. Obviously you want to do that when you're in the builds there. First one is going to be this snare here. And just cutting out, doing some EQ work, some saturation, and then the filter to kind of filter it in, going up on the build, and then Endless Smile as well. And this Endless Smile looks like we did go pretty high on this one. And this is a mistake right here. So that's that. Unless, I don't know if we did that on purpose, but I don't think so. Endless Smile intensity, this one's going up to 0.33. We have another snare here, just cutting out the lows again, and auto filter on that one. This one, bit different. I would say this one's more wet with like reverb and stuff. This one also has obviously reverb and stuff, but it sounds more dry and more less washed out, I would say. Less big, honestly. Let's see here. You got this fill snare, which we had this at like going the whole way. We ended up just doing this little 3 pattern here, and we just left the automation we had. We did that on purpose. That it needed some filtering, that it sounded fine on there, so we left that. And then we have a siren pad thingy. It's kind of like a synth. Really like that. I think it builds intensity, like in the builds. So have that going, and that's just a string pad from Serum. Looks like from Tech House Market. Preset pack. Got the effects there. And then just automating the gain as it goes on throughout the drop, kind of making it, or not the drop, but the build, kind of making when you kind of lower the volume as it goes up, I feel like it builds a little bit of tension. So what we're doing there, and then we mute it after, let's see, where did we mute it here? So we're muting it here in the drop. I think we were initially going to have it here in the drop and builds in some other spots, so we were automating that, but doesn't look like we ended up keeping that. This kickstart's not on. Auto filter, just cutting out some of the highs there, and then this one's actually automating for the build. And then we have this Stinger violin, which is just the high-end violin that most people use in breakdowns and builds and things like that to build tension and kind of feel like you're in an environment with atmosphere. Just cutting out the super harsh highs, and then obviously the lows. And then got a soothe on there to kind of tame it a bit, just using the default preset. Don't think I touched that at all. And then wider to make it a bit wider, even though it's already pretty wide, so we only use 22% on there. Then this is just crowd noise that's really quiet. Oops, sorry. Really quiet, minus 60.8, and then this is just white noise, minus 63. Again, not sure if you can even hear that unless you have headphones on, but it is, it kind of makes your track feel more alive and not so dry. I think we're going to experiment with bringing these. We put these on every track, these two specifically, Wild Boys crowd noise, and then this Hawk white noise, but I think we're going to experiment with making them a bit louder in future tracks and kind of getting more atmosphere in future tracks, just because I think atmosphere kind of gives the listener more energy when listening to the track, and kind of get more immersed in the track, and it doesn't feel so dry. But we have to see how it goes. If we put too much of that stuff, it kind of messes up the track and lowers the intensity. So got to figure that out if we want to do that. This is just a random audio track that we didn't use, and then we have our down, like our impacts and down sweeps, things like that. So I'll just go through them. They're all pretty simple, just cutting out the lows. Nothing as far as processing on any of them, but I'll play them for you so you can hear them. That one, and then this one. Really like this one. Those two, I really like those. And then this one, that's like the actual impact one. And then so this one's actually like a tension throw, I guess you would say. I don't really know what to call that, but this one also same thing. So all of those together. Yeah, pretty much what we have there. Noise, just normal rise noise. The normal noise riser there. This is also more noise. So for the builds, we kind of layered. We're going to start trying to do less layering of like noise and risers and stuff, I think, just because you don't need that many. keep it simple, you know, and that's the process. You learn as you go. But to us, it sounded good in here, so again, same thing. That one has more sidechain and a pumping effect, so that would make more sense of why we wanted to layer that in there with the other noise. This one, more of a tonal riser, so also makes sense why we'd layer that one. This, I didn't think we were using this, but I guess so. Random, just like Foley and things like that. That's not Foley, but you know, random different sounds, perks and things like that. This, we use this white noise exhaust from Cashmere. We use it in most of our drops, like right at the beginning of the drop or anywhere we want to add like an intense like psh sound. So yeah, just kind of gets a little bit more impact there, makes the drop feel more impactful, and that's pretty much the effects. The vocal, we so the vocal, we recorded this just using this mic that I'm talking on now, and did some processing. I think we just pitched it down. It's a bit muddy, honestly, but I mean, it works, but probably would have processed it a little bit different if I redid this track. I like the tone of it. I just wish it would cut through a bit more. So that's just being honest. But this is.
Oh, she bad, she move like a queen, got that look, she ready for the disco scene, the way she move.
So it's a bit muddy. Could have been cleaned up a bit more, in my opinion, but it works. Cutting out the lows as best we can, trying to cut out as much as we can there without making it too thin. Didn't end up using that overdrive. This isn't being used. Dipping probably some like resonant pieces that we didn't like there. And then using the West End vocal rack again. And sidechain. We're sidechaining it to the kick, 43% using the nice and tight preset. And just some automation for filtering. And the utility we're automating here probably in the build, unless it was not even actually used. Oh, it's in the beginning here. Yeah, so that's being automated to kind of bring it up because we had so much filtering on it at that point. But this one is no additional processing. We probably just recorded it from this track. Let's see what it is.
Oh, she bad.
It's honestly just a straight recording, I think, but we didn't end up doing any processing to that. This one is we were trying chops, but didn't end up using anything from it, but didn't delete it, so that's there. And this we didn't end up using either, it looks like. And then processing on the actual group, cutting out the lows again, trying to clean it up here. We cleaned it up as best we could because we did like the tone of the vocal, but and then 60% wider, trying to make it wide and feel bigger. Again, trying to clean it up as best we could. I think we got it to where we could for this style of vocal, but there's probably some other processing we should have done. Just using Soothe, and I don't know why we have so many soothes, but we got a de-esser, probably some stuff at the top that we didn't like, and then just a vocal rescue mix bus preset, and then also the did some mid-side EQing here, and then sidechain again, and then using the gain here to bring it up again. Yeah, I mean, this vocal, it was a little harder to process, and just because it's kind of too low. I don't know. We made it work, but it did give. I feel like it gave us a little bit more. It needed a little bit more processing, but anyway, done. It's already out. On to the next. You learn and you keep going. Synths, what do we got here? So got a few synths here. So on the actual group, we're cutting out the lows. On synths, we cut it out with a softer. We're not doing the ×4, just because sometimes synths you do want a little bit more of that lower end in there to make them feel full. So cut it out like that, and then just using the kickstart to the kick, 31%. You usually don't want too much on your synths, because then like transient and things like that will be cut out, obviously. But bringing it up by 2 dB, that was probably just after when we were mixing it and leveling it in. Nothing on this group. We got bass one shots here. See what that sounds like. Just a preset. And Serum 2. And looks like it's from one of the K&B preset packs. And using that with EQ8 and cutting out the low end there, saturator, cutting out more low end after the saturation, again, because it's going to introduce some lower end again. Doing a delay here and cutting out after the delay. So that's that one. We have this triplet. It's not actually a triplet, but I don't think that's even a triplet, but we see what we got here. So this one is this preset here. Actually don't know what pack that is, but cutting out some of the harsher highs, the lows, getting more saturation in there, and then lifted it up a bit, 0.45 there for some reason. Probably just wanted it to cut through a bit more. Some filtering, probably for builds, things like that. And kickstart, we have 31% on this, which it's already on the group, so usually this is a mistake when I do it, but if it sounds good and if I realize it, but then I take it off and it doesn't sound as good, or I don't like the way it sounds, I'll just keep another kickstart on there, and that's more for like shaping the sound. Yeah, so, and we got this one, which is the same preset. We try to, so we're starting to try and make our synths, and I mean, most of our sounds, we're trying to start using like one preset and then tweaking it as many times as we can to get as many different sounds out of it as we can, so that everything kind of comes from the same preset and starts to sound cohesive in the track. And that's what we've been working on our most recent tracks. Because sometimes when you use a bunch of different presets, they just won't sound like they fit in the same song, if that makes sense. We got a EQ on here, Pro Q, cutting out some of that same area in the low mids there that we were doing with like the bass and the kick, and then a soothe, and that's just a synths mid cleanup at 2.6. Drop 2 stabs. So this one is, let's see. So we got that one. This one, same preset again, just tweaked something on it. I don't know what we tweaked on it, but that's how we got it to sound. Got the low end cut out there, some saturation, some more EQ work, decapitator, and then a Pro Q. I think this is the same one from the last sound. And then we put on that West End vocal rack again, and just some auto filter there, which isn't automating, so we must have just used it like an EQ at that point. And Soothe 2, same as the last sound. And then let's see here. Drop 1 stab. So we got on the group, nothing. This one. So that's the intro one for drop 1. So play with the track. So that one, it's layered with these other ones here, looks like, but it is just cutting out the lows, doing some more EQ, cutting out some of the harsher highs, using some compressor here, capitator, the Pro Q, boosting up some of these highs here, or mid highs, and then that's the same one. Then a utility, this is not doing anything, and then kickstart or some more sidechain. And then the last synth here is this build main lead, and this is in both builds here. So let's see what it sounds like. Looks like we're opening the decay as it goes up, which, yeah. So opening the decay in the preset. Let's see. It's actually, I think this is the same preset as the last ones, but cutting out the highs here so it's not too harsh in that area. Cutting out the lows again. Saturator we have turned off, it looks like. Endless Smile, this is going to be for the builds, obviously building intensity there with that, washing it out there. This is auto filter, which I don't know what exactly it's automating for. We might not even have used that, but we left it on, to be honest, 'cause I don't think it's actually doing anything. Yeah, I don't think it's actually doing anything. And then a wider at 37% on this one. And kickstart on here at 31% using the nice and tight preset audio, going to the kick again. And then utility, just bringing down some of the width, and then automating gain. Probably, actually not even automating the gain. I don't know why that was left on from something we were probably trying, but. And then the mute, we automate this after in the build so that it doesn't drag on. So, yeah, and that's pretty much the whole track. Nothing really crazy. It's pretty simple. Again, we want to start trying to do this like a breakdown for each of our tracks as they come out. This one's a little bit late. I know we released it like over a month ago now at this point, and we have the new track Missing Out. By the way, go check those out if you haven't. Our first track on that we got signed to Decipher. If you have any like suggestions of how to improve these, please let me know. I do want to get better at explaining things and then not going too in depth if it's kind of like boring, because like going over each EQ and why I used them, I feel like can be kind of boring. You can see them and see like what I'm cutting in and out, things like that. But yeah, just let me know. I do want to keep doing these. Also, any other tutorials that you want, like that are shorter tutorials, like how to do something, let me know. And I'll start trying to post some more videos of production as well on our channel, and hopefully we can stay consistent with that. But give us some ideas on what you want to see. And then also, again, if you want to do any like 101s or anything like that, just hit us up on like Instagram. All right, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.